Well, welcome back, everyone. We are just flowing today with back-to-back conversations with the authors of the best-selling book, The Diversity in Humanity. And I am so excited to be joined for this conversation by author John Alaimo. John, welcome to the conversation. There it is.
My hard copy has not shown up yet. I pulled the trigger too late.
How has it felt for you to become an author this week?
Pretty cool, I felt like there was a certain mindset I needed to get into while writing to really capture my voice and, kind of the story I wanted to tell. And then going through the process with you and the other authors to bring that to life and to watch, reactions of, our coworkers, our community, has been really exciting. So it's been a great process. Yeah.
Fun fact about John before we get into the full bio. John, your wife, Sarah, participated in a Soul Excellence book in October of 2021, The X Factor. So I really consider you and your family and now your son as like the Soul Excellence first family. You're now both authors. I think we got to do a children's book with Jack or something. And I'm just grateful that I've gotten to know you and your wife and your family throughout this experience. And I want to thank you for showing up and sharing your chapter in this book in particular. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I know it's been fun watching Sarah go through the process as well. Her second book. So it's been exciting to be part of these book launches and the author community, you could say. And Jack's ready for that illustrated pop-up book whenever you are. So I'd be excited to contribute.
All right, perfect. Yeah, we'll start the storyboard. But let's talk about you. You serve as the vice president of Amazon's People with Disabilities Affinity Group. You are also the founder of Amazon's Mental Health and Wellbeing Affinity Group. We want to talk more about that. You're a senior business partner to the organization within HR. You're wearing a lot of different hats, and it really feels like, as you share in your chapter, which I love the title, Divergent Thinking, Beyond Our Biases, you share how it's almost like your entire life story has led up to this moment of creating and advocating and leading these types of organizations within Amazon. So maybe just talk to us a little bit about your origin story, starting with the feeling like you didn't fit in way back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do talk about this in the book and the chapter here. But, since I was a child, there's then that sense of discomfort, and I'm not like the rest of people. And when I look at how others interact, communicate, their ability to naturally blend and fit into situations, their interests, and how they learn and respond to certain cues, it's a little bit different. And since I was a child, I had these I guess symptoms, I guess you could say, of being extra sensitive to sensations on my skin, smells, and just as all those senses that were heightened. Sure enough, I was a child living with undiagnosed ADHD and what a lot of folks previously referred to as Asperger's, which is a spectrum condition. I was an individual who was neurodiverse, and I did not know this. My family did not know this, and nor did they, understand what additional resources available for children like myself at the time to, benefit from, which are a lot more common and more understood today than they were then. But they did exist. And needless to say, it was always, I guess, hard to fit in because of that. Motor coordination with sports as a child was interesting, to say the least. Yep, I just stand there and get hit by the baseball, and then I'd react, and it's like, oh wait, it's like, sure enough, some of those things were a moment in time, but some of those, definitely were carried forward into my adulthood. But navigating life as a child, delayed learning, wanting to be held back, then being at the top of the class within a year, right? I felt like I was trying to understand how others were able to communicate and learn, and trying to comply with those expectations of others or myself. And it always took an additional learning curve to understand what that was until I was a lot of the opportunities to lean into my strengths.
Mm.
I found math, I found science, and some of those, areas where I could learn a little differently and show those strengths and hyper focus and, really, be, a step above and beyond. So in those instances, I shined. So it's always been those areas where I've kind of like had to navigate and running straight forward, hit barriers, and then re-navigate, run forward, hit barrier until I didn't have that level of resistance. And then, I'd be okay. But, sure enough, that continued into my adulthood, and, naturally gravitate towards being an engineer. I am in HR and diversity inclusion today, because that's where my passions are. But, once upon a time, I was, building data centers for other organizations, mechanical and controls engineer. That's kind of my background. But, like you alluded to, I think I'm really passion driven at this point in my life. And, when those opportunities to take my lived experience and the way I see the world, systematically, how it comes together and be able to help inspire change and, bring, help grow communities to, instill a sense of belonging, then, that's just a fantastic opportunity that I just can't pass up. And that's what I do today. I like to build, communities and, help bring folks together to talk about, their, how they live life. And, they're not alone, and we're stronger in numbers, and, we can do this together. So a lot of, shared, learnings and life experiences to be, that occur in those communities. So it's very exciting.
I love hearing you talk about like this opportunity now to like really live into your passion and in alignment with your values, which we're going to get to. As you share in the chapter and you reference lived experience, like, I mean, it hasn't been easy. You talked about some of the hurdles, some of the walls, the things that you ran into. And in your chapter, you get really vulnerable with us and sharing about addiction and mental health. And I love if you could talk a little bit more about sort of that journey and what was like the wake up call or the aha moment that started to shift everything, and change the trajectory that you were on for some time.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think there was that necessarily aha moment. Being neurodiverse, it wasn't just like a light bulb went on and it was different. I had plenty of opportunities to come to fruition where that things could be different, if I was able to redirect my focus. But I didn't. I hyper focused on the same old things again, and I was stuck in old patterns and whatnot. And so I guess what really changed that for me is being able to enter new spaces or industries and make sense of those quickly, and be able to innovate within those with outcomes or opportunities that have not yet occurred, or that I could drive and I could be successful with, where it hasn't happened yet. And that's the kind of stuff that really gets me excited, that I can get behind and really put all my time, energy, and passion into, to really kind of build those new spaces. So that's really what it was for me. But with living on the spectrum, self-medicating, battling addiction, and someone that's been in recovery for years now, that's been its own challenges, having subsequent mental health conditions, anxiety, depression, as well as multiple diagnoses, and kind of not trying to identify and let those diagnoses define who I was, has also been a struggle, or something that I'd have to keep in mind, where it would not totally take over who I was, and put these barriers around my abilities, right? So setting all that aside, it's just like, who am I at the core? And I think that's what I talk about in the book is come to terms with self. And that's when we get into those values. It's like, what are my values? And furthermore, we talk about those biases, those cognitive biases. And, I lived certain life experiences, and I had certain, inputs to shape my perception of the world, from those that, were my family, my culture, my background, but also, all those, conditioned outcomes of those experiences I went through, to perceive, who I was and how I fit into the world. And those aren't always accurate. Our brains have the ability to, kind of plug in, information where it doesn't exist, or to optimize, whatever, like, hey, you've been through this once, twice, three times now, this is the output, right? Or this is your, this is the experiences or the instances that you find yourself in, this is what's going to happen. But that's not necessarily true, right? So, breaking that down, to understand, wait a second, like, if I expose myself to these different social circles, or if I, am part of these communities and gain a different perception on life, I can now have new information to use to understand, who I am potentially, and, what I think about others and how I fit into the world. These societal, constructs that, we form through social media and, in groups and out groups and so forth, that, I may or may not fit into, and the impact that that has on individuals. So it's been a wild ride, to say the least, with, navigating all that. But, knowing that, having that kind of core group of folks with you, next to you, to learn and grow with, and then, all these communities to tap into for information, it kind of sets aside all those preconceived notions, those fears of, what's going on. And that really, a lot of folks may be influenced with, and, promotes, stress and anxiety, on a regular basis. So, I'm blessed to have those, communities around me today.
Right now, I mean, as you've followed your own healing journey, you've explored all of these paths, you've been in recovery, you maintain those practices, you have a core set of values. Like, what I hear from you and in your chapter is like trying to keep things super simple and focus on what matters most, knowing how your mind is so powerful that when it focuses, like it goes all in, and really, so therefore the simplicity, the focus matters. And at the same time, like, you've been in kind of this unique position where you have founded an organization within, the behemoth that is Amazon, focused on mental well-being. Just talk to us about kind of how you were able to go about doing that. I mean, it feels super impressive now that I'm like sitting with it, of like bringing something like that into existence at the organization. What's that journey been like?
Yeah, sure. I found myself at a point, where, I had actually take some time off work, because I was, amidst a mental health crisis. And, to have the strength to raise your hand and say, I'm not 100%, I'm not at my best. In fact, I probably need to step away from work, is a very uncomfortable thing to do in the professional environment, because you fear, what the outcomes could be, what other people's perceptions are, not to mention, at that point in time, we weren't talking about our mental health at work. We weren't talking about, if someone disappeared and came back to work, we're like, oh, what happened to them? Like, what's going on? So there was a lot of stigma associated with, even seeking help, for our mental health conditions. So the fact that I was able to, I was at that point in time where it's like, what do I do? And, I asked for help, and folks didn't know. My manager didn't know, his manager didn't know, my HR was like, hey, call EAP. And that was acceptable at the point in time, right? They're helping, and, we're getting the support. Fortunately, I found myself in a place where, I was able to get some help and get back to work. But, the whole process to me was, really cumbersome. And it's like, at the time, if there was 1 in 4 people, that had a mental health condition every year, now 1 in 3, and if 1 in 10 had a substance use issue and we're in recovery, where are these people? Why are we having these conversations around us? So sure enough, there wasn't a clear answer. I researched what opportunities existed, nationally, at the, federal level, at state level, and connected those individuals, in government, as well as, other organizations that were starting to talk about it. And I built a framework, for a large organization. And part of that was building community, part of that was connecting with, benefits teams, and, helping, champion, what resources were needed for employees. Part of that was, putting on programming and events, and really that was the constructs of building an employee resource group. Through, I think like 2,800 hours of personal time and investment, off hours across 3 years, and a lot of additional momentum from other folks that wanted to contribute, we turned that into an employee resource group. It's been an exciting process, and has over 20,000 members today, and growing rapidly, and it provides a lot of value, and what it has shown is that people do want to talk about what's going on in their lives. When these topics or themes, of different programs or sessions pop up, folks gravitate towards those. Hey, I identify with that. I want to talk about that. I want to hear what others have to say about that. They join the conversation, they join the community, and they champion those. And they want to talk about it. So it's just a great place for us to overlay that mental health, our psychological continuum of care, awareness, prevention, recovery, and treatment and recovery over the workplace, and be able to make sure that the organization is supporting the employees and their families in all those areas. And that'll help offset that paradigm, to be able to be less burdensome to the individual and their family and the organization itself. So it pays to care, and it's a culture shifter, right? It's what organizations really need to do to drive a sense of belonging, to really instill, hey, it's okay for you to be yourself. It's okay for you to have, to be vulnerable, and to, what is a psychologically safe workplace? What is that? What does it look like? And how can we, help promote that? And, those are the kind of things that really, drive retention, lower cost of turnover, and, overall, just output of individuals as well. And, for their well-being.
I mean, you highlight in what you describe as like the importance of community and of care, especially when it comes to things that are mental health related, things that can keep us so trapped in our mind and unable to see a way out, and feeling like we have to go it alone and that we can't reach out. And so the more that places like this exist, where people feel like, no, I can reach out, there is a place I can go, I can express myself, and that it doesn't, basically that this work doesn't have to happen like in the shadows, as if it's like you said before, people would just go away and return and we don't ask any questions, and like, let's just keep moving on. It's like a place to really process and allow people to move through this. And especially at this moment in time, with everything that's happened the last few years, like these spaces are more important than ever. Because that there's like the psychological pressure that's been happening lately is so strong. So even someone who maybe never really considered themselves as having a mental illness or having a mental breakdown before, like these last few years, like that happened to those people as well. Like it's just, we've been through a lot. And so it's so great that you put in the personal effort and passion and focus to set up something like this. And of course, to do it in a structured way. You mentioned frameworks, the process, like, we need these types of tools for something that can feel too like kind of amorphous when we talk about mental health, which I love.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned, most of us have gone through this, and even if you haven't, understanding how to support, your colleagues or your family members when they have a crisis, or, we all have mental health, right? We all have biases. It's great to understand what an ally looks like, and also what your role in helping others understand who they are, and other viewpoints of the world around us, to put them at ease, and but also to help individual growth. I think that's just another catalyst to really helping further progress humanity, in its essence, right? Is just being able to as our evolution continues to evolve, our brains do, our experiences do, the way that we, are able to process, our brains are able to process information, literally is an evolution of our brains, prefrontal cortex and those neural circuits that are occurring, where those were, focused on, mobility or, feeding ourselves or whatever, years ago. So, I mean, the fact that, we actually are able to, see this experience and process, like, wait a second, like, maybe that's not the case. Or,
Yeah.
maybe there's a different, maybe I don't have all the information here. And how can I get that information so I can perceive this, have the information to perceive this, like how, I don't know, how it really may be, occurring. It's just like mind blowing. So, I mean, it's really amazing.
Let's end on this, and then one bonus question. Since you do talk about values, what matters most to you right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, my underlining values are, community, self-growth, my family, security, and so forth. So, right now for me, I think security is a big one. And that's with job, security. It's with being able to provide for my family. And, as a previously single person, those always haven't been as important to me.
Yeah.
So the way that manifest is definitely has taken different shape. So, I was able to take a lot more risk, or earlier, where I'm not able to these days. So that's something I hold up front and that I have to continue to think about. But also, the importance of my family and my community. I'm not hyper in tune with my community right now as I have been in the past years, or months even. But when I am, it just gives me this sense of fulfillment that I can't describe. It's just, I feel more whole.
Yeah.
And, I am not right now connected with them. And that's been a progression of, the pandemic, and then just not staying, in touch with folks, and those communities that I've, built or am part of. So, reestablishing my involvement in those communities is another, mechanism that will really, get me more in tune with those values that I really hold important right now. But, I guess those are really probably two, and self-growth, always, the more lived experience I have, and, the more information I attain by, growing older, those are inputs to, how I perceive myself, my life, and what's important. So, keeping those in mind and being able to, hold myself accountable for ensuring that I'm living in line with those values and I'm growing, is just another, great attribute.
I love what you share there, because it speaks to the fact that our values do evolve depending on where we are in life, what matters to us, and we always get to reprioritize. And so to hear, right, that security is one for you now that maybe wasn't so important a while ago, but like now it is important, and it helps to make decisions. I really think of values as a decision-making framework. You sort of run it through the filter of what matters. And you're like, okay, yes, we're going to do this, or no, we're not. Like, what aligns to those values? And we get to choose those and change them whenever we want.
Right. That's right.
Let me, before we go and I sign off, I have to ask, since we were talking backstage, if you can share with us what we see behind you on the screen. Like, what's right behind your head?
I see a light bulb. I'm just joking. This is a coffee roaster. Yep. A tub full of green beans. One of my hobbies is roasting coffee. This machine will soon be the size of that wall as we move, because I'm getting a new roaster, and
Oh my gosh, wow.
so we can sort of mass produce beans and fulfill some of those customer needs there.
No, I mean, this is so amazing. Like, you've really inspired me, or I'm like, for the amount of coffee I drink, I should totally just roast and make my own coffee. Like, where do you like to get beans from? Like, which country or which latitude? What's your go-to source right now?
Yeah, funny enough, the one of our I guess donating sponsor there, the Alaimo girls. How do you say the
Alaimo girls, yeah.
They're from Kenya. I love my Kenya beans. I was at a coffee expo last week, and I connected with the chief of agriculture, like exports for Burundi. I met a farmer from Kenya. And also I got some contact information for another region that I get beans from, but it's just been pretty cool. So yeah, I really would like to be able to directly connect to those farms and understand, how those beans are sourced and be able to support those, micro, economies in that sense. Yeah.
This is so cool because I'm just realizing now, John, that like a month ago, I wrote down 100 life goals. And one of them was like, I wanted to be able to source coffee directly from Ethiopia and have my own coffee roaster. Like, I forgot that I wrote this like just a month ago. And I feel like this dream is already like in motion by hearing what you're doing, the connections you're making, the progress you're making. Of course, our connection to Alaimo girls in Kenya. Like,
Yeah.
suddenly I see this all happening like way faster than I imagined. And this is so cool.
So when you're ready to make a trip to Ethiopia, let me know. We'll put the
All right,
Soul Excellence roast together for you. Yep.
let's do it. Oh my gosh. All right. These are the unexpected things that happen when we collaborate in a book. Like, you never know what's going to happen. I love this so much. And John, I just want to thank you for sharing your story on divergent thinking and being neurodiverse and founding these organizations and leading the life that you have and the way that you've made decisions. It's so powerful. And like all of these conversations really speaks to the diversity in our humanity and the humanity in our diversity. And I just want to thank you so much for being here, for being an author. Thank you.
Thank you for enabling those conversations to occur.
You are so welcome. And I'm just excited for our whole future vision too with coffee. And I want to thank all of everyone who's watching for joining us throughout the day. You've been just such a beautiful audience. And for those catching on the replay, leave us comments. We'll be tagged in them. And I hope that you continue to join us. We have one more conversation coming up today at 5 Eastern with Rishi, a fellow author. More to come tomorrow. But for now, thank you. And thank you, John. Appreciate you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.